What's happening to you these days? Having lots of fun? Believe me, I know some folks that are in for some fun.
Take a minute. See what's in it.
But you can see how dangerous this could be.
But first, we're going to have a little fun tonight, folks.
It's time for the Geeky Brummie podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Geeky Brummie podcast. Been a while since we last saw you all, but we'll get right into it. Joining me today, of course, is Mr. Keith Bloomfield. Welcome.
Hi Ryan, it's great to be back.
Good to see you. Mr. Leigh Price is back. Say hello.
Hello.
And Mr. Manlovel is in the house.
Hello, friends.
How the devil are we all? It's been a while. It's been festive season, and it's been kind of, but not a lockdown, depending on who's bothering to obey to the rules anymore. Keith, what have you been up to since I last spoke to you?
I believe I've been living in a 1970s science fiction movie, and half expecting Charlton Heston to ride down my street in an open-topped Jeep. Apart from that, not an awful lot. I've been trying to get to the cinema a little bit more often recently. Not so much now since Omicron has encroached. Catching up on books, comics, TV shows. I've still got an absolute stack of things to watch. I've just started catching up on the final season of The Expanse, which I'm hoping is a good one. And I've still a couple of episodes adrift on the book of Boba Fett, because for some reason I didn't start watching that as soon as it dropped. So I'm a bit behind. But I'm just playing catch up mostly at the moment and avoiding Charlton Heston, because that's always got to be a bad sign if Charlton Heston appears.
Yeah. Did you have a good Festivus otherwise?
Yeah, I guess it was cool. I'm only just about finishing the chocolate that I got over Christmas, which is okay. And recently finished the 2 boxes of Twiglets and Cheeselets, which now have become scarce in any of the shops.
I've been very disappointed by the lack of cheese footballs this year. It seems to have been like the hot merchandise and not in stock anywhere.
Yeah, I do not accept the idea that it's supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Come on.
If it's KP, they should be around somewhere. They're made in the UK. No other country would eat cheese footballs. Let's be quite clear in this matter. They're only made for the UK.
Now, what it is like they did an offer where like you get a free PS5, so that's what it is. Everyone's just been buying.
Just like discarding the wafer enraged Formula cheese.
Was it an actual PS5 or was it just a PS4 in a PS5 box?
It was a PS2 and a PS3 taped together.
What it actually is, it's an NFT of a PlayStation 5. And through that NFT, you automatically get ownership of PlayStation, the entire company, apparently.
But it's an NFT of a PS2 taped to a PS3 in a PS5 box. Addendum.
Yeah. But apparently, if you buy things online now through auction sites, you apparently own all licensing rights to them. It's quite interesting. It's just that's the new economy. Apparently, it's IP theft is no longer an issue. You just buy stuff online.
Apparently, I now own. Based on that logic, I now own the Sherlock Holmes IP. So I've literally just bought 3 of the games on Steam. That's how it works, right?
Talking of games and gaming, what have you been up to? Gaming correspondent, Mr. Leigh Price.
Yeah. What have I been playing? I have been playing Resident Evil 7 because I got 8 as one of the multiple games I got for Christmas, but because I hadn't yet gotten around to playing 7, I'm like, I should probably do this now and then start on 8. And I think I got to one of the worst parts, and it's very early on. It's basically like the basement area, and there's like these weird mold zombie things that just there's no ammo. They can attack you from across the room, it feels like, and I'm just like getting endlessly frustrated on it. It's just a series of corridors, and there's like 12 of them.
Yeah. So the only question, which is the only question which ever comes up with Resident Evil games now, better or worse than Resident Evil 4?
I mean, okay, controversial opinion. I didn't actually like 4 that much.
Oh, sacrilege.
Well, I wasn't like I hated it, but there was definitely a point where I was just like, I'm not really into this. But I wonder if that's me coming into it kind of later than other people. So it maybe just doesn't hold up as well. And I was playing like the original version. Maybe a remaster's like improved some of it as well. So there's always that element of it as well.
Yeah.
But it definitely is good so far, apart from just this whole basement area that's just frustrating me.
It seems to have been a massive improvement on Resident Evil Giraffe. So
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was like a massive shift over to like back to kind of the roots of it, proper survival horror, very limited ammo and stuff like that. And you know they've stuck with it with 8, and that was topping Game of the Year lists last year. So you know it's obviously is working out for them still. So
cool.
Them carrying on.
Awesome. And you've also ascended to PS5, haven't you?
Yes, I now have a PS5, and I have played exactly one game exclusive to the PS5, which is Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart.
Is that the only game Sony have IP left for? Microsoft bought everything else.
Yeah. No, the problem with Sony and their IP is that Jim Ryan has locked all of them up in a cupboard and doesn't want to let them out ever again, unless it's God of War.
The Disney DVD methodology. It's like you can have it for 3 months, alone, and then take it back.
Yeah, we could do a new Jak and Daxter, we could do a new Gravity Rush, we could do a new Parappa the Rapper, but what if 12 more God of Wars? Have we thought about that?
Killzone? Did we make anything for Killzone? Apparently, no, maybe.
When was the last Killzone game? It was a while, I think.
I think it was like launch of the
launch of PS4, yeah.
Shadowfall or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's like, remember the franchise that we used to have, which was quite popular?
I mean, I played the Killzone games exclusively just for a video, and I've never played them again since. And I hated every moment of playing them. So
I'm surprised that Sony haven't launched their own kind of Venom game. You know, they seem to rely heavily on the fact that they've still got Spider-Man. So it's like there's going to be a Mobius game and a Sinister Six game and whatever licenses that we've still got from Marvel. We're just going to make games of those.
It just reminded me of a meme that I saw on Twitch in the last couple of days, which is basically, do you know that I've got nothing left except Spider-Man GIF? With just Sony written over it. But
yeah, PS5. It's pretty good system, but mostly just currently a slightly flashier PS4 for me at the moment. So
I bet you're very glad you've got your Game Pass as well.
Yes.
Did you have to build an extension to put the PlayStation 5 in? Or did you have some room left?
No, like I said, I literally just unplugged the PS4 and replaced it with the PS5. I think I had to shift the PS3 over slightly, but that was about it.
Awesome. And Matt, how about yourself? You've got a new background, we see?
Yeah, so since we last met, I moved flat. Obviously, we had Christmas, where I picked myself up the latest strain of coronavirus, which was very fun. And I basically spent Christmas playing Halo, and then I marathoned the Matrix trilogy in preparation for watching the new one, but I still haven't got around to watching the new one. And then it got me nostalgic, so I dusted off my PS2 and started playing the first Matrix game, which controversially I really enjoyed as a kid, and I still...
Enter the Matrix, that one?
Enter the Matrix, yeah. And it got a lot of bad rap, obviously because it wasn't about Neo or whatever, but actually I really enjoyed it as a kid, and I think going back to it, having watched the films as an adult, even though the second and third films are they're all right in terms of how it expands the story, and then you've got like Animatrix as well, and that whole kind of like shared media to tell one story. It was quite good. I enjoyed it.
I attempted to dust off the old black leather coat out of the cupboard and go around dressed up again, like everybody did. For the 1 year in 1999, where every single sci-fi nerd wore shades and had a black floor-length coat.
Yeah, I mean, my favourite bit was just they would wear shades in every situation, even when it's pitch black, still wearing shades. Just got to look cool.
What I think was kind of cool about like Enter the Matrix, even though like I never really liked it much as an actual game to play, I did definitely admire the fact that it was like a side story to the movie. So it was like focus. It kind of was doing that thing with the Animatrix, where it was telling different stories in the same universe. But I just thought it was kind of a bold move to just kind of go, this is a separate story in the same universe, and we're using a video game to tell it. And I think they were definitely kind of ahead of their time on that one. Like, I think if a company did that now, no one would really be surprised. But back then, it was like no one else is really doing that. So
if you kind of think of it, the latest Spider-Man games, they could have easily wedged the Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home plot into it, and they've gone, no, we're going to do our own Spider-Man game. And then you've got Miles Morales, which is kind of the spin-off of that spin-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just, I had a newfound respect for it, I think. And that's it. And then obviously going back to Halo very quickly. So by Halo, I mean the Master Chief Collection. And mixed feelings. I really enjoyed the original Halo games, even though with Halo 1 and Halo 2 especially, incredibly janky. And obviously Bungie built into that jank. That was part of the game. But also things like frustrating things where some enemies, some like grunts, I would empty literal bucket loads of ammo, like a whole assault rifle worth of ammo into a grunt, and they just won't die. And then in other instances, I pop their head and they're dead straight away. So it was really consistent in that tone. But the actual sort of story in that was quite fun. But then I played Halo 3 ODST for the first time ever, and I really loved it. So obviously it was a different kind of along the same theme of quite adventurous with the IP. Obviously Bungie just went, we basically want to make Firefly mixed with a neo-noir investigation kind of game in the Halo universe, and I really loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
I'm sure Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk and possibly more people from Firefly were voice casted in, weren't they?
Yeah.
But yeah. Coming off that, I've been playing through the Master Chief Collection separately, completely randomly. But I've done the thing of trying to do it chronologically, so I've started off with Reach. So I've just finished Reach, and now I'm about to go and play Halo 1, and I'm thinking, is this a bad decision? Because Reach was kind of, Bungie had nailed their Halo control system by then. So it's just going to be back to me driving into a wall for 10 minutes, trying to turn around in a corner. So basically, I just played Reach like whack-a-mole. So empty a clip in, and then just go up and hit them until they die. That's how you play Halo.
Yeah, and I did exactly that as well. And what I'd say is it is jarring at first, but then it was fine. I think for me, what I found harder was Halo 1 really had a weird way of level design where you just wander around aimlessly, and because a lot of the areas look exactly the same, you are just wandering around, and I got lost multiple times. But then as a kid, I remember it being absolutely fine, so I don't know what happened there.
I think the library is the worst level ever in Halo. Because it's just the same level repeated 10 times, and there's no way around it.
Absolutely. But I enjoyed my time. It was fun. All of it was fun.
Awesome.
So what about you, Ryan? What have you been up to?
So, I've finally got around to, over the festive period, finishing watching This Country, which was a BAFTA-awarding comedy series that's on BBC iPlayer, which, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it after listening to this podcast, of course, because it's one of the finest British comedies that's come out in a few years. I mean, Keith would probably say Detectorist is better, and maybe Paul and Bob Go Fishing, maybe. But...
they're on different levels, really. You know, the reason that This Country's funny is because it's so real, whereas The Detectorist is like it's an idealistic view of how life should be. You know, you find gold under a tree or whatever it is. But this country is basically, this is basically where everybody lives, and everybody's got these neighbours. So it's kind of a look at a Cotswold village life and about the fact there is nothing to do for kids at all. Nothing. And it's really, really fun to watch. So if you haven't watched it, I really do say go and watch it. But other than that, so I played a bit of Halo, played Mass Effect Andromeda, finally finished it, and the ending was
meh. Just basically watched the last 20 minutes of the game and was just like, that's it.
I wonder if that's actually in the core code of the game. Like, they've written the game, they've got all the code. They get to the end. It's like, oh, I'm on line 2,742,000. Right, this is it. End of the game. I'm just typing in. Meh. There you go. Game's done.
I also like that you seem to think that games are coded linearly like that, Keith. just beginning to end.
That's exactly how I did it when I got Zap 64. You started on page 12, you typed it all in, poke this, poke that, all the rest of it, page after page.
I mean, the Unreal Engine famously works like a Spectrum.
But I think the biggest issue with Mass Effect Andromeda was it was all blatantly set up for DLC to like continue that story, and it's kind of like it was like this is the end of the first act, and we've got so much more story to tell, and then because it just did so poorly, it's like reading the Fellowship of the Rings and then saying and that's the end of Lord of the Rings. And
it's like 80% of Netflix shows.
Yeah.
You're invested in this show now. Cancelled.
It's like Final Space, 3 seasons of a brilliant storyline, and then we're just going to cancel it. Then we're not going to make any more. Yeah, just frustrating because the potential was there, and to be honest, the control scheme wasn't bad. I really enjoyed the way they did it, and it was mixed it up rather than just the whole corridor shooter that Mass Effect 3 turned itself into. But it was just frustrating. The story didn't match, and again, it just feels like the introduction to a universe. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with what is now Mass Effect 4 that they're dropping hints for, because apparently they're combining the Andromeda story and the end of Mass Effect 3, which is probably going to upset quite a few people depending on which of the 3 coloured flavours of ending of Mass Effect that you choose.
Which cornetto you got at the end.
Yeah, basically. So be interesting to see what happens. But yeah, so that was pretty much it for me. So mainly vegging out, eating chocolate, watching stuff and playing stuff. But to talk about 2021 and wrap it up, that is going to be the premise of this show. So we'll be talking about our favourite video games, film, TV, comic books, and musical albums from 2021. And also, in honour of the Electric Cinema reopening this month, we'll be talking about some of our memories from days gone past in the Electric and what we expect and hope from the future. But we'll be back after this.
It's stuff what we like, it's stuff what we like, it's stuff what we like in 2021.
So, returning to the Annus Horribilis that was 2021, there was some glimmering lights that came out of it, especially in the world of media. So we're going to talk through some of our film and TV choices of 2021 and what was our kind of favourite stuff. So to kick us off, Keith, what was your favourite film of 2021?
Well, not controversially, my favourite film of 2021 ended up being the last film I actually saw in 2021. Although I will give an honourable mention to Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch, which was maximum Wes. If you're a fan of Wes's previous work, The French Dispatch was that dialed up to 11. Excellent.
Does it have all his usual actors in it?
Yeah, it's basically the entire repertory theatre group that Wes has developed, plus a few new faces. Mm-hmm. But it was maximum Wes. It was pretty spectacular. I really loved it. But the film that actually made me occasionally want to stand up in the theatre and applaud the movie and basically say bravo to it, probably no surprise to anyone, was Spider-Man No Way Home. Which was surprising because
spoilers. Sorry,
I won't give anything away. But it was a film that I kind of went, okay, I've heard of what they're going to try and attempt to do in this, and I kind of thought, well, it'll be okay. The previous 2 Spidey films had been good fun. Maybe not top tier Marvel for what I wanted, but it ended up being a film I just sat there and went. Yeah, it completely won me over. I just sat there and just went, oh, this is just so cool. Mm-hmm. And at multiple points, there was either bits of action or bits of dialogue where you literally did just want to stand up and just go, bravo, Marvel. You know, this is exactly what we wanted, and this was it was a brilliant way of taking everything that had come before it and basically going, we've fixed all of that, and now everything's brilliant. You know, so yeah, it was a pretty thin year, I think, overall for new films. There were some terrible films I saw that won Oscar approval, but it's Spider-Man: No Way Home. Really, I think the idea that it's making a bit of a run for Oscars in the next few months, you know, it could get something. It's not going to be Peter Jackson's Return of the King style Oscar wins, but
we've got some Academy Award winners starring in it.
Yeah. So is it My Cousin Vinny? Is that the closest we get to an Oscar winning thing in there?
No, we've got a few Oscar winners in there.
Yeah, but it was great. It was everything that it needed to be and more. And you know, I thoroughly enjoyed it, more so than I expected.
Yeah, I was going to say I think it's the best Spider-Man film in general. I mean, Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's film, is a great film, but I think this one just pips it. And the thing that I've always, it's kind of, I think a lot of people have said it, Tobey Maguire always seems to be the best Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield had the quippy Spider-Man down to a T, and he really did that. And Tobey Maguire's always been like an excellent version of both. So it's kind of like having that excellent version in the film was good.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was just glorious. The 2 hours and 40 minutes just whipped by. Yeah. Whipped by, see what I did there? And it was just great. I just loved it. I thought it was great. I mean, you know, the fact that there was those occasions where you just wanted to just go, thank you, this is great. Yeah. Just little things. I mean, you know, I'm invested in the whole comic book world. You know, I've been reading comics for as long as I can remember. I've been watching, you know, Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man. You know, we're talking to the kid that was in The Sound of Music was Spider-Man at one point. Yeah. But yeah, it was just great. It just went, this is, and what was good about it was it made Tom Holland, his Spider-Man, the truest Spider-Man. Just how they dealt with the whole thing and then pulled it back, and it was like, this is Marvel showing us they understand the characters, which other film companies perhaps don't do quite as well. It was like, we understand the core of the character. We can tweak it and change it and do little things to make it contemporary and interesting to modern audiences. But we understand the core of what happened when Stan and Steve and all the rest of them got together to create these characters.
Yeah, and I think if you were a Marvel fan, last year was pretty much... I think Marvel was pretty much 80% of the box office, because you had Black Widow, you had Shang-Chi, you had Spider-Man, you had the Venom movie, and then if you look on Disney Plus, we had WandaVision, Loki, Captain America and Winter Soldier. Sorry, Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Spoilers.
And, What If, and MODOK, to kind of throw the extra one in there. So it was kind of a lot of Marvel media came out last year. A lot of Marvel media. But yeah, Spider-Man was definitely one of the highlights of that. Leigh, how about yourself? Does anything catch your eye at the cinema or on-demand streaming services?
I mean, I'm really bad at watching films. The closest I got to watching anything feature length was a YouTube documentary about Fast Pass at Disneyland.
I've watched that documentary.
It is great. I'm subscribed to Defunct Land. It is a great channel.
Yes. I really do recommend that as a video. If you like,
it is
stats nerd. It's amazing.
It is genuinely interesting. Like the channel in general is interesting because it's got all these weird like stories about Disneyland's history and everything. And that one's really taken off in a big way just because I
Yeah.
keep seeing it being recommended to me. I'm just like, I've watched it. I'm subscribed to this channel. You know that I've seen this YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just all about how Disney like invented the fast pass system and then screwed up the fast pass system and then screwed it up some more and now
Yeah.
the mess that it's currently in.
And they
So,
can't go back. That's the problem, because
Yeah.
it's kind of like it's spiraled into an ungovernable
Yeah.
mess. But him and Technology Connections have been two of my favourite YouTube channels. I never thought I'd watch an entire 1 hour YouTube video about how to load a dishwasher properly. It's fascinating. If you ever watch Technology Connections, really recommend it. But yeah, that is a really good shout actually, because I'd say that's a feature length documentary. That's
it is feature length. I just checked. It's an hour and 45 minutes, so it is feature length.
I think
So
that's
that's the closest I've got to a really good film this year. So.
Yeah, it's a very good shout, and it's for free. So if you've got any interest in theme parks and Disney, really good stuff.
It's on defunct land.
Mm-hmm. How about yourself, Matt? Anything you picked?
So, firstly, I agree with Keith. Like, that was pretty much one of my favourites. But obviously, we've done that, and it's a bit low-hanging fruit. Also, special mention as well to Shang-Chi as well, because I think that was a cracking Marvel film in general, one of the strongest stories, and obviously how they dealt with themes and the representation and the culture around it was phenomenal, as we covered in one of our sort of previous podcasts. But moving away from that, I think for me, one of my favourite films was Cruella, and I love it because it was just a really fantastic, almost play on Devil Wears Prada, Mean Girls, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually really good storytelling, and I think Emma Stone did a fantastic job as Cruella, and the kind of the story arc was handled quite well. I mean, I know Disney has a trope of going back to villains and going, oh, actually, they're not all that bad, but Cruella doesn't necessarily leave you like that, and the way it feeds back into the sort of original 1996 cartoon, I just thought all around it was another sort of example of very clever storytelling, within existing IP, Yeah,
because I've heard it described as Joker for teenage girls.
Yeah, and I am basically a teenage girl. I am a massive teenage girl, and it was perfect for me.
Yeah, it's not one I've actually watched yet, but it's been highly recommended in other places, so might check it out at some point. It just didn't appeal to me because it's kind of like, I do love 101 Dalmatians. I've read the original book years and years ago now, but I really liked I think it was the 50s. Was it 50s or 60s animation, Keith?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was 60s.
It'd be 60s, I think.
Yeah.
The first
because it
Disney
was
version.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not very well regarded in quality Disney animations, but it's a personal favourite. I really liked it. So worth picking up on that story.
Yeah, I think it's worth picking up, and I think as well what's quite interesting about it is it's quite a queer film in terms of its themes are quite queer, but just not overtly. And so I think it will be one of those kind of films that actually appeals to sort of a whole new generation of queer people, but not in a way of, it's overtly a queer film. It's all about, being misfits and going against the grain, but learning to, get along with yourself and sort of community, that kind of thing. So I would highly recommend it to anyone who either likes that kind of ilk of, Devil Wears Prada, that kind of thing, or just likes a generally good Disney film.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it must be one of the hardest characters to sympathise with, considering she's stealing puppies to make a go in a book. That's kind of like the end game situation of where she's going to get to. But
yeah, because she hates puppies. She's a capitalist.
Yeah.
Sounds really contemporary. You'd be hard pressed to think this was a 1950s story and an early 60s cartoon. It's like, what?
Next, you'll be drinking at a work event.
It's a business meeting.
Cool. Right, so my film of the year is not going to surprise anybody. Again, it was close run actually, because Shang-Chi was kind of my almost film of the year. It's a fantastic film, considering it was number 25 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Leigh, you can sign now. Number 25 in the MCU. It felt fresh. It felt reinvigorating. It kind of felt reviving that kind of, and it felt like, even though it was an origin story, it didn't feel tired, which is kind of hard to do after so long in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, coming up in nearly 15 years now. And how do you make something feel fresh and different? So I think fair credit to them. But no giant shocks. My film of the year. And Keith, I know you hate the soundtrack, but it is June. It is June, and it is one of the best visually cinematic films I've seen for a long time. Denis Villeneuve, hats off to him. I don't know how he managed to get that on screen and get away with it only being part one as well. That's odd, because it was long, but it felt like it had only just started by the time we get to the final scene in the cinema, and I was so annoyed where it stopped where it did. It's like, yeah. No, I need more. I need the rest now. Now, not in 3 years' time. I need the rest now. And to take that gamble, I think it's very much well paid off for him. It was absolutely beautiful. Casting was amazing from top to bottom. Jason Momoa actually gets a chance to have fun in a role and be himself rather than constantly being scowly as he has been in the DCEU.
Isn't everyone scowly in the DCEU?
Pretty much. Oscar Isaac was great. Timothy Chalamet, who I've never watched in anything before because, again, I'm not a 13-year-old teen. But I really appreciate him. I think he acted very well. Did a very good representation of young Paul Atreides. We had Thanos in there, Josh Brolin, and even though he didn't have much screen time this time around, he was great.
For a brief second, I did think you mean the actual character. I was like, that's a weird inclusion.
But yeah, I don't think it didn't feel like there was a minute wasted on screen, even though it was a very long film. If that explains it, it was like everything felt very well orchestrated, very well put together, and I really, really do recommend it if you've not watched it. I'm hopefully they're going to put it back on in the cinema when part 2 comes out, because then that's just going to be there with industrial bucket of popcorn for 6 hours, and I will not move until that film is finished.
I think it's one of those kind of similar to sort of how Peter Jackson did Lord of the Rings. It's also very admirable how he's told the story as well. Like it actually makes. It's still a little bit like, okay, what? But it's a lot easier to follow, I think, for an audience who don't really know Dune. Yeah,
and especially, because the thing with Dune is, because it's such a big, thick tome of a book, it needs to be done through somebody's vision, and that's what Denis Villeneuve has. He's created his vision of Dune. He's done that very well. And if you compare it back to David Lynch's one, you can see the studio being meddled with so much. And the problem with that film, it's great for the first half, and then it feels like it's just a constant cutting of scenes because it just felt so short towards the end. It felt more like a montage than the actual film towards the very end. And then you've got Jodorowsky's Dune, which was never made, which is a bit of a shame because that seems to have been a complete and utter trip. And I think lots of LSD must have been consumed with the concept making of that film. But I think it is very clear it's Denis Villeneuve's vision. But as you said, Matt, it's very well structured on how he's done it, and he's made it accessible rather than having just Sting in his nappy.
Plus, fun fact, Timothy, sorry, I can't remember his last name, Chalamet. If I'm correct, I think he started his career on YouTube making custom controller plates for Xbox 360 controllers. So it just shows that,
Yeah.
dream big.
No, don't say that, because that means Logan Paul will try and make another movie.
I'm
Yeah.
Googling that because I cannot believe that is true.
I swear it's true. It might be. I read it somewhere.
Yeah. Keith, I know you're a big fan of Dune. Well, the original version.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying it's a great science fiction movie. It is slightly, I think, upended a little bit by it only being part one.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And if it hadn't have been greenlit for part two, it wouldn't have been a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's Villeneuve has proved himself to be a visionary when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I've said previously, I was amazed that his Blade Runner 2049 turned out as good as it was. So I always kind of knew it'd look great, and his sense of scale and kind of the cosmic was pretty
I was
impressive.
going to say, Arrival was very much that
Yeah.
similar kind of sense of scale kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to admire any film that has the audacity to include a bagpipe playing composer in a major sequence just because he plays the bagpipes in the actual soundtrack. I mean, just we, you know how I feel about Mr. Zimmer, but he had the audacity to get himself in the movie playing bagpipes.
Yeah.
So it's. But this is something that the Scots must kind of think, is that no matter what happens to the human race, no matter how far into the future we get, there's always going to be bagpipes. That is now canon. That you'll have loads of other kind of instruments and weird things and kind of Bene Gesserits and all the rest of it, but bagpipes will always be there.
So you're saying we can never escape?
You can never escape the bagpipes.
I was going to say they're used as a war weapon, which is what bagpipes are. They're assault on your senses with noise, and that's how they're used in this film, which is quite typical.
Yeah,
but I'm going to say the sound of the film as well. The cinematography was amazing, but the sound design as well, I really enjoyed it, and how they've updated stuff like using the voice and like the shields and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that. I don't think there's a bad performance in that film from anyone. I'm struggling to think if there's anybody rubbish in that film. I don't think there is.
So I did check, and Matt is correct. It was an interview with NME where Timothée Chalamet confirmed that he used to have a YouTube channel called Modded Controller 360. And that's
ye of little faith.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Apparently there's something like 3 or 4 videos on there, and that's all that's on there now.
It's not on his Wikipedia page.
I know, but
we shall correct that.
I was going to say, give me 5 minutes.
Right, to flip on to the next subject, TV choices. So, start with you, Matt. What was your TV pick of the year?
So there was quite a few contenders because I think TV was quite strong this year. However, for me, it is Arcane, which is the League of Legends anime. As much as it pains me to give credit to League of Legends, Arcane is just a beautiful bit of TV. So everything from the sort of the characters and the story and the world building, the way they handled it narratively, how they've structured it is absolutely fantastic, because compared to, unfortunately, take the Dota anime, which is sort of done in exactly the same way. In there, they just dumped loads of exposition on top of you and you just didn't really care. Whereas in Arcane, you get attached to the characters and you learn about the world through the characters. The treatment as well of certain themes. So one of the major characters, she has an abundance of mental health issues, and the way they sort of portray that is really, I think, really well done and well handled. But just the art style and the music is just fantastic. They've captured the style of the game, and the way they used the game and extended media to kind of ease into tease Arcane and then sort of draw parallels with Arcane. But it's just a beautiful story, really intense, and keeps you sort of on tenterhooks all the way through, even if you're not a sort of anime fan or like animated series. I would say firmly recommend it.
Yeah, it's one of those things I've not watched myself yet because I think, well, I watched Castlevania, and I think the Dota show was supposed to be in a very similar kind of framing as the Castlevania show, but there's just been that much content to get through this year. I've just not got around to it, but from what I've heard, very positive things, I think.
Yeah, and I'm not lying when I say you could pause at any moment and it will make a beautiful backdrop for your desktop, a beautiful desktop wallpaper. It's just that well done.
Awesome. How about yourself, Leigh? Any TV picks?
Nope. I'm just as bad at keeping up with TV. Like, I've got a growing list of shows I need to watch, and I still don't watch them. So,
Cool.
hopefully, like next year, I might have something.
Some 2021 highlights to throw.
I mean, they're about to release both the Cuphead show and Critical Role's animated series, so
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll end up watching those, and that'll be like next year's pick or something, probably.
Awesome. How about yourself, Keith?
Well, that's good that Leigh hasn't got any because I've got quite a few, which I will mention in passing just because I think that we've had a plethora of really good shows over the last year. All of the Marvel TV shows have been particularly good, and each one seemed to kind of up the bar each time. Particularly, my favorite was Loki, which was just an outstanding piece of weirdo television that had a fantastic soundtrack, and I absolutely adored it. Although I did adore Hawkeye as well, but that might be mostly down to Lucky the pizza dog. So he steals the show. Another one that is on Disney Plus, but through their Stars label, which was particularly good, and I don't know if many people have seen it, was a show called Reservation Dogs. This is partly produced by Taika Waititi, but also a guy called Sterling Harjo, who's a Native American filmmaker, and it's basically a story of a bunch of Native American kids and what it's like. And if you imagine, it's kind of got that very dry comedy sensibility of things that you would expect from Taika Waititi,
Since they're like Hunt for the Wilder People style.
Yeah.
But
it's got a very particular aesthetic and comes from a very genuine place, and one of the episodes focuses on one of the characters, and it's a tour de force for that particular actress. She's phenomenal, only young, and I think it's like one of her first roles, but it's a brilliant bit of television. It's just great, and I think if you haven't seeked it out, sort it out. Yeah, do check it. It's on Disney Plus, and if you've got access to Disney Plus, give Reservation Dogs a look. I've also enjoyed Invincible, which is been a particularly great animation adaptation of the comic book, which is great fun. With boys kind of touting that hyper-violent, R-rated superhero kind of stuff, which we're now getting with the Peacemaker TV show, which is due to come out soon. That's been pretty good. I've also enjoyed a couple of other shows, including It's a Sin, which was on Channel 4. Russell T Davies doing a really genuine look at what it was like to be gay during the peak of the AIDS pandemic in the 80s. Fantastic bit of television, really good. It kind of reminded me of what it was like back then, and the abject way people were treated, and it didn't shy away from the kind of realities of actually what was happening. It reminds me of a few kind of movements and stuff that were happening around the time. Also on Disney Plus, I think, was Only Murders in the Building, which reunited Steve Martin and Martin Short. Yeah. And Selena Gomez, who was particularly amazing, really. That was great. Only Murders in the Building, absolutely brilliant. Thoroughly enjoyed that. But my pick of the top show for 2021 has to be Ted Lasso, which is on Apple TV Plus, based on a character Jason Sudeikis created about 7 or 8 years ago for the time NBC Sports started showing English soccer on American TV. So they kind of tried to explain it, and it's basically a American football coach comes to coach Tottenham Hotspur, and the obvious culture clash that happens. But the TV show is based on a more imaginary team, and it's second season we're in at the moment, and it's just beautiful television. Ted Lasso is the person we should all aspire to be, and it did do the weird episode of where they just went off on one episode where we follow the character of Beard, who's his assistant coach, and it's just a tripped out weird episode. But we also have the Ted Lasso Christmas episode, which wasn't at Christmas, but is the greatest episode about Christmas that I've seen in a long time. And basically we should all be fans of Ted Lasso, be Ted Lasso, although personally I'm more Beard than Ted Lasso, but if you watch the show you'll understand why. But it's amazing. The cast is fantastic. It's won awards, it's picked up some Emmys, and it's amazing. It's a pity it's hidden away on Apple TV Plus, which isn't kind of one of the big services that people will get. But if you've got an Apple device or bought an Apple device, the chances are you'll have got a free 12-month subscription to Apple Plus if you bought one recently. So do use it, watch it. There's the morning show on there. There's Servant. There's For All Mankind, which is a great show. There's C with Jason Momoa. Yeah, there's a great bunch of shows on there. There's a whole bunch of fantastic music documentaries on there as well. But Ted Lasso, it's brilliant. Jason, if you want to come and have an interview, and we love you, it's great. So
I've heard good things about that show, and it is a real shame that like it requires an Apple device, because that's not something I intend to do anytime soon.
It doesn't require an Apple device. It just needs an Apple subscription.
Yeah, that's also.
You can watch it. You can watch it. Smart TVs now will have the Apple TV thing. You can get it on your Xbox and your PlayStation.
I think Tim Apple has enough money. I think that's where Leigh's coming from.
Yeah.
Well, no, I have like an iTunes account, but it was always a pain in the ass to use. So that's what the problem is. I don't care about how much money Tim Apple has.
But I'm sure there's ways of being able. There's ways of being able to see it.
You can sell the seeds.
Yeah, Napster or whatever they call it these days.
But yeah, again, it's another show which I've heard very highly recommended. But as you mentioned, being on Apple products and my well-known hatred of their walled garden of you can't escape their services if you're in for eternity. So, but yeah, I will surface it when it eventually arrives on British terrestrial TV in about 20 years, probably. But show for me. So this has been hard. As we mentioned, there has been a lot of Marvel and Disney TV. So can we count Book of Boba Fett? It's ongoing.
It started in December.
In December. So it's scratching my Star Wars itch for now. So Loki, said fantastic show. WandaVision was amazing TV and almost felt groundbreaking up until the final episode. Shall leave it at that. And then Falcon and Winter Soldier was a decent show, but Hawkeye was amazing. I really, really enjoyed Hawkeye. But for me, it's a show that's buried on BBC Two and keeps moving around in the schedule, and is mainly being pushed through iPlayer, and that is What We Do in the Shadows Season 3, which is. I love Flight of the Conchords. It's one of the core shows of my being, which it was endlessly quotable. I could probably do the hippopotamus versus rhinoceros rhyme right now. Anything coming out of the stable of Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, I'm automatically going to love. But this series, I think, has been the best series out of the three. And it went to places which I completely didn't expect it to go. And it's really hard not to spoil it, because if you're a fan, I don't want to ruin any of it, because there's just some moments in it which I had to pause the TV to stop laughing that hard. I was almost crying at certain points, especially when the Baron pops up. If that's a
quite literally,
if that's a reference for anybody, and the Sire and. Yeah. So we get more people. We get Mel from Flight of the Conchords turn up in this series as an additional character to the cast.
Kirsten Shaw's brilliant, isn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, any scene with Natasha Demetriou, she automatically steals the entire screen away. Mark Frosh is amazing. Matt Berry's voice is just transcendent. And Kaven Novak managed to still come out as the lead in amongst all of that. And it feels like everybody in the scene is trying to one-up each other on quality. But Kaven Novak still managed to just hit them to the post. It's such a fantastic cast. It's such fun. If you've ever watched the documentary film, it's not required watching. It's really worth watching to see like that mockumentary they made. But this show, it's some of the finest TV ever.
I really need to watch that show. Like everything I've heard of it and every like clip I've seen of it, it looks exactly like the kind of show I would love.
It's made me never be able to say the word crepe paper properly. That's how much of an impact it's had on my life.
I mean, it's got Matt Berry in a prominent role. It has to be good.
Yeah.
That's
him just screaming out, "Bat!"
But
it's great as well that they've let the characters develop as well.
Yeah,
through the 3 seasons that you get to a point, and particularly for Colin Robinson in this season.
Oh yeah.
And there's a payoff in the last episode with Laszlo, and you just think, this is great. This has all been building to something.
Yeah.
It is a show that it's just beautifully constructed, and I think this season is weirdly the one that Jermaine and Taika had the least involvement with.
Yeah, it seems to be they've taken a step back and just let it naturally grow. But I'm really hoping they do another season, because it's been left in a perfect kind of position for them to carry on. If they don't, I'm fine with that, because they could have. They've done a very clever thing of they've left it in a place that we can. If it doesn't get a full season, it's fine. But there is enough open-endedness there that a full season can be made very easily. Well, it's just the constant cameos as well, like David Cross popping up in this one. The basically anybody who's been in a vampire in any kind of film or media previously usually will pop up in What We Do in the Shadows at some point. And there's a whole bit. I don't know where to spoil it. There's a whole bit. No, I'm going to mention it. Wesley Snipes' internet connection is one of the funniest jokes of all time. And I'm not going to say any more than that. But it's just brilliant. Please go and watch it. If you've not watched it, it's on iPlayer in the UK. It's free to watch. I think it's on FX in the States. So
it's an FX show in the States, yeah.
So it's on Disney Plus as well. So
the first 2 seasons are on Disney Plus.
Yeah, so it's on Disney Plus. It's on iPlayer. There is no excuse. Go and watch it. It is some of the funniest TV.
Just go, Leigh, now. Why are you still here?
Now.
Transform yourself into a bat, Leigh, and fly downstairs and watch it right now. Seriously, it is one of the best things I've ever been committed to screen. No, I think that's a good place to leave it on this segment, and we'll be back shortly to talk about the other bits of what we liked in 2021.
Hello everyone, this is the part of the show where I talk about my games of the week for the past 2 weeks. Last week, game of the week was Buck Up and Drive, an arcade racer with a ludicrous sense of style and more than a little bit of wackiness to it. It arrived on Steam last week after numerous updates over on itch.io. An endless driving game in the vein of Outrun, Buck Up and Drive encourages you to drift your way to glory alongside mechanic swipe from fighting games and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I don't even know. It looks ridiculous in the best possible way, and for that it has to be the first game of the week of 2022. Game of the week this week is Nobody Saves the World, the latest game from Guacamelee developers Drinkbox Studios. And while that game was a wacky take on the Metroidvania genre, Nobody Saves the World is the same for classic top-down RPGs. You play as the titular Nobody, a faceless being who can shapeshift with the help of a magic wand they swiped while NPCs were arguing. And that shapeshifting leads to a number of bizarre forms similar to Final Fantasy's job system, ranging from the standard Ranger, Rogue and Guard to the less standard Mermaid, Bodybuilder and Horse. It looks like a fun, goofy take on a genre that can often take itself too seriously. And with Drinkbox's past record, there's a high chance that this will be excellent. Those are my games of the week: Buck Up and Drive from Fabio Fontes and Nobody Saves the World from Drinkbox Studios. And now, back to the main show.
It's stuff what we like, it's stuff what we like, it's stuff what we like in 2021.
So, to return to what we liked in 2021. That was a terrible thing. So this we're going to round up all the other media we liked. So games, albums, books, and comics. So Leigh, you can go first. What video games did thou like in 2021?
Okay, so initially, from the moment it released up until until my choice changed, it was Psychonauts 2, because it was Psychonauts is back after so long, and doesn't feel like it really went away, especially because the game really does just follow on exactly from the end of, well, it follows on from the end of the VR game, which in itself follows on from the end of the first game. So, like, in reality, like 2 days have passed since the events of the first game, and there's even a joke about that somewhere in the game where it's just like, it's like, oh, I haven't been here in days, which obviously to the player is like, it's been 16 years. But it's just, it kind of just did everything that the first game did, but better. So the writing had improved, the level designs improved, like the platforming feels a lot better this time around. And I think what really won me over with it was just how much extra care and attention they put into mental health representation. Because obviously you're shuffling around in people's brains, and so there's a lot of difficult topics of things that are buried away in people's brains that, you know, they had to tackle, and they actually managed to do it in a way that, like, the game stays funny, but they never turn the mental health stuff into the joke. And I just think they really, like, managed that balance really well, having this sensitive subject matter while still being funny and just a good fun time, and just everyone involved in that, everyone at Double Fine just needs to be commended for doing that, because I think, you know, I'm someone who obviously cares a lot about mental health representation, talk about it all the time on my YouTube channel, and it's something that, like, seeing a game just do that so casually, but I know that behind the scenes so much work would have gone into that. I know they worked with TakeThis.org to make that work, and just a superb experience, and I loved the whole thing. And then after that was game of the year for me, and then Forza Horizon 5 came out, and I'm still playing that game. So it's basically, it's like the most fun racing game I've ever played. And as someone who's only sort of casually into racing games and will play them occasionally when they look sort of interesting, just this one is just, it's less about like circuit racing and, you know, all the sort of usual kind of boring technical side of racing. It's just like, cars are cool. Do some cool stuff with cars. And you're just driving around Mexico. You can just drive off mountains. You're driving through the desert and, you know, throwing supercars through the jungle and all this sort of stuff. And it's just, it's so ridiculously fun. And like I said, I've been playing it since it came out. Because they've got the festival playlist, so it's every week you get different challenges and stuff, and been jumping in and making sure I get all those done, because it's just really good fun to just kind of throw cars around Mexico and just have a good time with it.
I mean, beautiful game as well, just beautiful, like just such a stunning, beautiful game in terms of graphics. It's just. I would happily drop $4,000 on a gaming PC just to play it up to max and just blow my mind. Well,
it's one of those things where you just like you're playing through it and it's all so beautiful, and I'm just like, man, I want to go to Mexico now.
I was going to say, because the previous Forza game, which I played and I haven't played the new one yet, was based in the UK, which it made the UK look pretty, which is good going.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I did actually download that too, because that's also on Game Pass, and I was like, I want to see like how the UK fares with this sort of representation, and yeah, it is kind of surprising how good the UK looks in that. And but what I mean, the thing that stood out for me with that one is that you can buy Edinburgh Castle, and I was just like, okay, sure.
I think your only problem, Lee, if you go to Mexico, is the fact you might get into a bit of trouble for driving around at 126 miles an hour and doing e-brake turns around corners.
Yeah, there is that problem.
Yeah, they might think you're carrying something.
It's that game where you just go, oh, what was that? And you just drive through a barrier and start going off road. It's like, So, go and investigate that.
I think throwing a mini off a mountain is probably not going to be as fun in real life as it is in that game.
Driving into a volcano.
Yeah. I mean, what I do like from what I've seen on the videos and the footage and the trailers, it's not just slapped on the, oh, we're in Mexico now, so everything must be yellow filter onto everything. It's actually a bit more realistic.
Yeah, like, and what I think is kind of impressive is they actually show a lot more diversity to Mexico than you'd probably expect from like all of the stereotypical depictions where it's like it's just a whole load of desert and just a whole load of cacti. Like, yeah, there's a corner of the map where that is true, but then it kind of moves into like the jungles and like there's an area that's more sort of, there's like a canyon area, and also just you've got all like the old ruins and stuff of like the old sort of Aztec temples and things. What saddens me is that you can't like ramp off them, which I imagine was down to like it's like, I don't know, the Historical Society of Mexico or whatever probably had issues with people doing that, unfortunately. But
I mean, taking an e-brake turn through somebody's burial ground, I can't see an issue with it.
But it's a great game because you can dip in and out of it, which is great. It's like you can just go, right, I'm just going to pop on for 10-15 minutes and you can get something out of that playtime.
Which is the great thing with the festival playlist thing coming in every week, because you can just jump in and do a few of those challenges, and then that you've had a good play session out of that, and you've unlocked a whole bunch of stuff. And that's another thing about it. It just throws rewards at you all the time. Even if you like lose your last race, it's just like, yeah, here's some credits. Here's a whole new car and all this sort of stuff. And it's so much fun. It's so ridiculous.
Awesome. So that's on Xbox One.
Yeah, it's on Xbox.
Series,
it's on all Xbox.
Yeah, all Xboxes and Game Pass on PC.
Yeah,
I
think it's on Steam as well.
Yeah, but if you want the cheapest version of getting it, get it on Game Pass. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, there is that. That's how I'm playing it. So,
how about yourself, Matt? What you been played and enjoying?
I mean, my game of the year every year is Dota 2, but separate to Dota 2, only because it's one of the only new games I bought this year, is Resident Evil Village, because. So I was a big fan of Resident Evil 7 and how they kind of went back to basics with it. And even though they changed the perspective, all of the elements of the original Resident Evil is there. And in the similar sense, Resident Evil Village has a lot of parallels with Resident Evil 2 in terms of how it has the same formula, but it expands it. And I think what I found, it was obviously really enjoyable. It still had a lot of sort of scares and adrenaline and that kind of thing. And I think what I found quite interesting was, obviously in all the trailers, you see there's vampires, there's werewolves, there's a lot of other like mythical, and how they actually feed that back into the Biohazard plot is quite well done, I think. Obviously, towering main lady aside.
There was a lot of thirsty people on the internet. A lot of thirsty people.
The thirst. But generally, it was a really fun game. I think one of my only very few criticisms is I thought it was just quite short. I think they could have expanded it a bit more. By the time every new sort of section, by the time I'd really be really enjoying it and getting really into it, it's finished and you're on to the next bit. But the whole story of Ethan Winters as well is just quite well done, and I think it's hopeful considering obviously the nosedive Resident Evil took. It's quite hopeful to see it go in this direction. I just only hope it keeps going in this direction.
Awesome, thank you. Keith, yourself?
Apart from Forza Horizon, I haven't played a lot of new games. So yeah, so pretty much what Leigh said, everything about that. I will briefly mention a game that I have had a bit of fun playing. I think it popped up on Game Pass at the end of the year, very closely. It's I don't even know if it's a game. It's called Townscaper, and basically you just you're in the sea and you just make a town, and it makes pretty noises and it looks pretty, and you zoom around and you just keep piling on top until you get to you can get to space, and you get an achievement for it. And there doesn't seem to be any plan to what I'm supposed to be doing next. But I just pop on every so often and just add a whole bunch of. It's basically like you're building your own version of Balamori.
Yeah.
In the middle of the ocean, and I haven't quite worked out what I'm supposed to do. But you just go on and it just makes a lovely noise. You go plink 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 plink, and your house is built. And I don't know what my end game is for it. It looks pretty and makes some nice noises.
I think
it's pretty much just like you are building a town, boy.
Yeah.
Like it's not really a sort of start to finish game. It's just an interactive toy where you can just build stuff. So
it's quite funny. It suits my gaming prowess these days.
Yeah. So I think I bought it on Steam 2 years ago when it first came out.
Okay. So
Because
it came out in 2020.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Because it was one of those things where you frequent Reddit quite a lot, probably like most of the internet. But there's like one of those posts which kind of got viral on there, which is him basically showing Townscaper as a tech demo. It's like, do you think I should bother releasing this? And everybody went, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it is just, as you said, a completely aimless game, and there's no plot, nothing behind it. It's just you get presented with a big patch of ocean and then go build.
Yeah.
It's
just a chill time. That's all it is.
It's just chill. It's good.
If you want just half an hour to zone out, it's the perfect thing. And I think provide your own soundtrack is the only thing I'd say for that. get some Laura Marling on, bit of chill stuff, something like that. But no, really do agree with that one. I'm kind of torn with my game of the year because it's either a game that's been re-released, which Leigh already knows what we're going to talk about.
I think I know what you're going with.
Or it's a game that got its physical release, even though it was out again quite a long time ago, which Leigh will know about as well. So it's either Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I picked up for the Switch, and I got a physical edition because I just like that. I like to own things rather than not have them digitally. Keith, my boxes is better than that one, you know.
Yeah, all right. You got the fancy box.
I've got the fancy limited edition, but But
still in its wrapper.
Get out of this conversation,
because I bought it digitally on Xbox and Switch.
Yeah, but it is an absolutely fantastic game. It is the perfect brawler, I'd say. If you ever liked those kind of double dragony games back in the day, side scrolling beat 'em ups, it's pretty much the perfect one, and it's the perfect franchise to team up with it. It's really good fun. Really enjoyed it. Really worth playing, and it's got a lot of replayability as well. There's so many different characters you can unlock, ways of doing levels, etc. It's just a good, fun, kind of chill out experience in the opposite way to Townscaper, where you can like just put it on for half an hour and just beat up thugs and just enjoy it. But my ultimate game of the year, of course, is going to be Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which, even though it's a re-release, I'm carrying it, Leigh. It's I put 120 hours into it this year, so kind of really couldn't not be my game of the year.
Yeah.
Mass Effect franchise is something I've loved since the original went back on the 360 back in the day, and it's kind of, I'm absolutely in love and adore the world and the setting that the game is built in, and I love the progression of the story up until the last 20 minutes of Mass Effect 3, which we won't go into. But Mass Effect 2 is still the highlight of the series, and it's a brilliant. It just feels like it's a complete universe to play. It feels like they really, really considered the game design and everything that went into it, and how the world interacts and how the different species interact with each other. And it was all delivered as a kind of, here's a full set piece, rather than just what happens now with most modern AAA titles, which is they run out of time. I mean, the other game I could have possibly chosen was Cyberpunk, but again, it's a game I've enjoyed, and the story's great, but it's just too broken to be any kind of game of the year. It's in a much better situation now. It's had a lot of patches. It's done the typical can't remember the name of the company now.
CD Projekt Red.
CD Projekt Red game where it's released broken, and then they have to like hurriedly fix things. But it's again a great game, but there is nothing that kind of reawakened that nostalgia in me than being Commander Shepard again for 120 hours and just reliving that world and everything I loved about it. So kind of that was my game of the year, even though it's not a game that's come out this year. Like my other game of the year, which didn't come out this year. It kind of counts. But right. To
You're the
move
boss,
on,
Ryan. You can choose.
They were re-released. It's fine.
it's a loophole. I'm abusing the re-release loophole. So moving on, shall we have a look at Keith's comics of the year?
Yeah, if you want to get a more in-depth list of the books that came out, it was a good old year for 2021 for comics. Quite a lot out there. A lot of things that had got pushed and delayed through COVID came out this year. So I have got a list of other great titles that are on the Geeky Brummie website, which is comics of 2021. So there's a few good things in there. Beta Ray Bill, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which is a great series. Almost my pick of the year was going to be Cain and Abel, which was a one-off from Image by Shaky Kane and Krent Abel, which was just a weird old throwback to exploitation comics of days gone by. Oversized format, was beautiful, really nice book. But I think in the end, I've kind of thought that my book of the year would have been Star Trek Year 5, which was show run, as they described it, by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzing. A plethora of different writers and artists working on there. And it just bridged the gap between the end of the TV series and the beginning of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Really, really well. I do like some of the design work that went into the motion picture, and they brought that into the comics world. And I'm kind of hoping that somewhere along the line they get to do a series based in the motion picture time period, which Marvel did, but they bungled it because they couldn't use any of the legacy characters. But it was really good. If you're a fan of Star Trek, I thought it was the purest distillation of that era in comics form that we've had in many a year, and I really enjoyed that run of comics. It was beautifully done, beautifully drawn, and a lot of passion obviously went into it. So if you haven't checked it out, have a look for Star Trek Year 5. I think it's 4 volumes now of the collected graphic novels, and they are really good. So do check it out.
Yeah, and here speaking, you're just going to go for the Immortal Hulk.
Yeah. I can't say too
great
much
book.
about that. Yeah, it's one of those books that you just go, oh god, no. There's things about it now that kind of make it tricky to kind of
unfortunately,
wholly endorse. But Al Ewing, top writer, he's doing some great work. There are some books out now that you should also check out that he's doing.
Awesome. And I should mention as well, Leigh has put up his 50 most notable games of 2021, which is definitely worth a read. Check that out. Doesn't mean they're the top 50 games, just the most notable.
Yeah,
reasons.
it's a mixture of like Metacritic data, trending data, and end of sort of collecting together like or other end of year lists to see what came up on there. So
Science.
It's
science.
Actual maths went into it. There's a spreadsheet and everything.
Okay, I'm going to jump in now with my 2 picks in the books, albums, comics mixed category that we're going to merge all together, which was 2 things. My book of the year was Sandman Volume 2 on Audible. It's an audiobook. It counts. Fantastic cast. If you've listened to Sandman Part 1, you're getting exactly the same cast pretty much. Absolutely amazing. Really well done. Neil Gaiman's been fully involved from start to finish in the process by the sounds of it, and the casting has been pretty much nailed. Really, really recommend. So go and have a look to that. Album of the year for me is an EP from a lady called Matilda Mann, who is a London-based songwriter. You've probably not ever heard of it because it's one of those things which I found on one of those weird Spotify. If you like this, like this, like this, like this kind of chains. It's like the TV tropes of music. But it's an EP called Sonder, and it's absolutely beautiful music. It's about 6 songs, I think. All of them, it's kind of really got a nice quirky music vibe. It's I can't really describe it. It's like uncompromising music. It's very emotive, very poetic tracks. My pick track out of that one is called Doomsday, and one of the lyrics in it, it's basically a love story set around the end of the world, which is kind of really relevant at the minute. So really recommend it. But as one of the lyrics really stood out to me, which was, "Before the world is doomed, I get to say that it was always you." Sorry, I'm waiting for them to pop up. Yeah, and then it's kind of just stuff like that, really mixed in together. Really do recommend it. Yeah, so it's kind of like that slow dancey end of the night kind of music or coffee shop vibe. So really recommend that if you've got anything like that. If you like that kind of music, kind of Laura Marlin, maybe Lisa Hannigan style of music, that kind of folksy stuff. If you're into stuff like that. Matt, how about yourself? Anything in the books / albums / random comic selection?
Yeah, so book it's kind of cheating because it's been out for years, but Chuck Palahniuk's Survivor. It's for anyone who sort of reads Chuck Palahniuk. He obviously did Fight Club, which became a really good film. It's very much his sort of tone. It's very nihilistic, very dark humoured, very dry. But it follows basically a guy who is a survivor of a religious cult. And it starts with him hijacking a plane and telling his life story to the black box as it's about to crash, and it goes back to exploring his life previously, and it's just I love Chuck Palahniuk's style because he's a master of the mundane in terms of all of the way his characters sort of present life is very mundane, but in a very beautiful kind of way. And the sort of the humor behind this book is the fact of he's the one who basically becomes a celebrity because he's one of the last survivors of this cult, and people like fellow survivors are slowly dying, so people think there's a killer on the loose. But the way everyone else just treats life is everyone's bored of existing, and so they're more interested in just self-destructing than caring about him who's in actual trouble. And it's just the way it's the concept and just the way it's written is fantastic, so I would thoroughly recommend it, even though obviously it's not a new book. But also Chuck Palahniuk is a fantastic author if you're very much a fan of dark humor and sort of dry comedy, but also quite beautiful and sort of philosophical writings. And then album, which was released this year, is Fear of Tigers. So he's a London-based DJ, and the way I can best describe this album, it's called Classic Fighter, and the front cover alone is awesome. It's very much a homage to basically PlayStation 1 era techno music, effectively. The way I can describe it is if the soundtrack from Tekken 3 met GTA Vice City, pop songs from GTA Vice City, and meshed. That's this album. I particularly like Don't Hurt Me and Carumba. I just think it's quite a nice diverse mix, but it's also the sort of electronic dance music mixed with synth, mixed with a bit of sort of pop. It's really easy listening, but it suits a multitude of moods, whether you're sitting there to work, whether you're getting ready to sort of unwind for the weekend, that kind of thing. It's just quite a nice vibe.
Awesome. How about yourself, Leigh? Anything in the wrap-up categories?
I mean, like, the closest I get to, like, an album is either the Life is Strange True Colors soundtrack or the Forza Horizon 5 soundtrack. So,
both released this year.
Yeah. So let's just go with that.
Yeah. How about yourself, Keith? Anything in the musical or written, non-graphical category?
I've been reading the Dave Grohl, the Storyteller autobiography, which is kind of interesting. It kind of tells the story of his rise to fame from fairly mundane roots in Virginia. Kind of skips over a period I was particularly interested in, which was kind of the post Nevermind era of Nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
And up until the untimely death of Kurt Cobain, I was hoping there would be a bit more insight into what was happening then. Not so much of that. So, but that's nice. I don't read a lot of biographies, but I do like those of people that I'm kind of interested in. Music-wise, no, I'm an old man now, so obviously I'm not down with the kids. Although I did have the soundtrack to Loki on loop for quite a lot of time during the Dad's Disco hour of when I was doing the washing up, with much too many shouts of "Turn it off!" From another room. Yeah, but not so much in the kind of the new music for me this year, unfortunately.
Awesome. And that pretty much wraps up what we liked about 2021.
Ta-da!
There you go, 2021.
Insert.
You get a C grade.
But,
Must try harder.
We'll put links to all of the media and stuff we talked about into the Geeky Brummie article on the website. So go into there. It'll be all listed if you want to go and find it. And we've convinced you to go and try some things that you might not have heard of previously. But yeah, that was 2021. On to 2022. It's been a while. We've missed it. It's the lovely The Electric. So if you don't know, The Electric Cinema, which is behind New Street Station, has been broadcasting films under many names and many guises over many, many years. It's been purchased by a lovely chap called Kevin, who's restoring it after it closed at the start of the pandemic. So we thought we'd kind of revisit things that we've watched previously and our memories of the old Electric before going into the new era, and just having a chat, basically. So I'm going to start off with this one because I'm going to be greedy. And my most favourite memory of the Electric Cinema is their screenings of It's a Wonderful Life, which I mentioned on the show previously many moons ago, is my ultimate Christmas movie. It's considering the film is about somebody trying to attempt suicide on Christmas Eve. It sounds like the most depressing movie of all time, but it's one of those Christmas classics. And Jimmy Stewart is one of my favourite actors of all time, and it's a film that I've loved. And the Electric has always been the best place in Birmingham to go and watch it. Me and Viv always used to book out a couch at the back of the screen. The way the Electric's set up is there's normal seating, and then there's a few sofas at the rear of the cinema, and you could hire those sofas out and then just sit there, veg, enjoy the big screen, have your popcorn, have your drinks, and just feel like you're watching a movie at home but on a giant screen. And it's one of my favourite things that me and Viv have ever done together. So that's me. Keith, how about yourself?
I've seen a few films at the Electric while it's been the Electric. Probably the most interesting experience was being introduced to The Room there, which was kind of quite interesting.
Throw the spoons.
I've seen a few films there when it was the flat pack stuff was on there, including animated Moomins. Most of my memories perhaps predate the Electric itself because the building's been there for quite a long time. So I have very fond memories of going to see the Return of the Jedi after it had kind of gone off the main screens when it was on it would have been the Canon Classic there at the time. Also the movie of the Twilight Zone, which I wanted to see. So I kind of have fond memories of its pre-Electric days as well. But hopefully the new ownership on the Electric will bring it back to its former glories and get some more weirder films in there. So maybe some older European movies, get some Wim Wenders films in there, which are very difficult to get hold of in the UK on digital or other formats. So I'd like to be able to see those again on a big screen, which would be nice. So yeah,
awesome.
That'd be cool.
Amazing. Leigh, how about yourself?
So I've not really been to the Electric very much, but it's one of those places where I keep wanting to go to more often. But I think like the main memory I have of the place is, I think shortly after moving to Birmingham, I was like trying to meet new people and went onto like the meetup.com groups, and one of those groups, as well as having like a sort of social drink thing, went to the Electric to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is always a good time, of course. So yeah, that's kind of my sort of prevailing memory of the Electric.
Yeah, seeing the knee on the big screen.
Yes.
How about yourself, Matt?
So I've only been twice, and like many things, it was on my to-do list to go more to, and then the pandemic happened, and then that didn't happen. So it was nice that it's been brought back. The two memories I had, the first one was Ready Player One, going to see Ready Player One, which, to be honest, wasn't that memorable, only because it was Ready Player One rather than anything to do with the electric. But I did have one very good experience, and that was I went to see the Titanic with bottomless prosecco with one of my friends, and similar situation. We got a sofa, and my God, that film is long, so it was very good to have a sofa, and the prosecco was lovely. But I think what I like about the electric is a very long time ago we had a podcast about cinemas, whether they're still relevant, that kind of thing, and I think the electric is very much of that breed of cinema where it is very much an experience to go. It puts the experience back into watching a film, because even with Ready Player One, which I thought was an okay film, it was enhanced quite a lot by just the aesthetic of being in the electric and watching it.
Awesome. Yeah, so it will be reopened by the time this is a broadcast to your ears. But it's fantastic to see it back, and it seems they're going to have a real diverse range of what they've got on screen. So I think they're relaunching with Belfast, which is it called Belfast?
Very good choice. Nice black and white film. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's from Kenneth Branagh, I believe.
Yeah.
Kenneth
Branagh directing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where he originates from.
Yeah, and they're bringing back 35mm to the electric as well. So their first 35mm screening is The Apartment, which was Billy Wilder's follow-up to Something Like It Hot.
Yeah, which is quite good, because I think if people are interested in the history of the electric as a cinema, they should seek out a documentary called The Last Projectionist, which is about kind of the end of an era for film being projected, particularly in mainstream cinemas, on film. And it's good that the electric is keeping that tradition of showing films on 35mm alive.
Yeah, and I mean, shout out to Nuevo Cinema Paradiso as well, which is about the love of film on film. So cinema on film, just wave it that way. Absolutely beautiful film. But they're also having a mix of other stuff. So they're also showing Nightmare Alley, which is Guillermo del Toro's new film, starring Bradley Cooper, which I didn't realise what the hell was going on until I saw the trailer, and then I realised it was a Guillermo del Toro film. They're showing Rocky 4, Rocky versus Drago.
Yeah, that's the new version where they've taken Paulie's robot out. I'm not sure I'm down with that.
Yeah, so he's taken out 40 minutes and put 40 other minutes back in, apparently. So, but it's their kind of rewind feature, so they're looking at older movies. And they're also going to be showing a bit of theatre as well. So they're showing Leopoldstadt from NT Live. So it's a way of watching your theatre on screen if you're unable to get to a theatre in the West End, etc. So it's a really interesting mix of stuff that's coming back, and I'm glad to have it back into the fold. It's always good to have multiple cinemas in a city the size of Birmingham, and it means that we don't just have to be stuck with the standard multiplex offerings. We get a nice mix of what's coming up. So I believe there's a mailing list on the website, so just go to electricbirmingham.com. Plenty of stuff on there, all the latest releases, to go on and have a mooch. But welcome back, is what I can say. And thank you for welcoming us here on the Geeky Brummie podcast this issue. You can find me online at Ryan Parish for the non-tweety stuff on a Tuesday. You can find me at Brummie Gourmand for the foodie stuff when I actually get back around to doing that. Because MasterChef's over with, so I'm not tweeting about that anymore. But you can find me also on the Geeky Brummie website on a Thursday, where I do my tech roundup, and on social media channels on a Tuesday, where I do the Twitters. Matt, where can we find you online?
You can find me on my Twitter at Mr. Matt Lovell, where I'm mostly retweeting Geeky Brummie stuff, talking about esports, or trying and failing to be funny. You can find me on a Monday on the Geeky Brummie Twitter handle, where I do my esports roundup, and I again talk about esports and general Geeky Brummie stuff. And you can catch my esports roundup, which is published on a Monday on the Geeky Brummie website.
Awesome, thank you. And Leigh, where can we find you online?
You can find me at BobThePetFerret on YouTube, where I do video essays and review type content. I've got Life is Strange True Colors video coming up in a few weeks, start February. You can also find me on Twitter at BobThePetFerret, where I tweet channel-related stuff and increasingly like video game stuff in general. I'm also on The Cheap Ferret, which is just me tweeting about other stuff that's unrelated to the channel. And you can find me on the Geeky Brummie website doing the Gaming Roundup every Friday, and usually on Twitter on Friday as well, when I remember to. So, yes.
Awesome. And Keith, where can we find yourself online?
You can find me scattered across the internet under the moniker of Hard Luck Hotel in various forms. Basically, if it's not got anything to do with Count Duckula, it's probably me. So on Twitter, it's got an underscore between the Hard Luck and Hotel. On Instagram, it hasn't. And then it's in other forms on YouTube and other places that I've forgotten. Various other social media places I've been to that I've never posted. I've once had a Tumblr, strangely enough, which I did post a bunch of stuff on when I was celebrating 30 years since 1984, and there was a thing. It was a whole thing, but I did put stuff up there. I used to put stuff up on the internet. It wasn't anything to do with Geeky Brummie, but now it seems that all I do is Geeky Brummie stuff. And on a Wednesday, particularly on the website and on the Twitter, talking about all of the new comics that are coming out this week, and then occasionally bits of news.
Most importantly, Keith, is Tom still your friend?
Is Tom still my friend? Tom's still my friend. Which Tom?
MySpace. Oh,
oh, I didn't do MySpace. I wasn't a musician.
Neither was I, Keith, but I was still on MySpace.
Yeah, but I was still struggling with Netscape. You know,
I was a teen in the late 90s, early 2000s. MySpace was that era.
Don't say you were a teen back then. I'm going grey enough as it is. Come on, you know.
You can find Keith on ICQ, MSN Messenger,
yeah. You can find me. You can find me in stock photography for Saga or other pensionable life insurance companies.
Yeah, do you remember when Friends Reunited was like the first social media? I'm going to show my age now. Oh, back in the day. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back again soon for another podcast where we'll probably take delight in the lovely weather, where you can bring your own bottle to listen to us. But thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the things that we hate to tell you to do at the end of every episode. But very appreciative in listening. And don't forget to check us out on social media, as mentioned, Geeky Brummie on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and at geekybrummie.com for all your article needs. But for now, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Love ya. Bye.